if you want to farm, if you want to stand in the arena, if you want to make the journey from nothing to a working farm in one generation, you're going to go through some steps, steps that I started 17, 18 years ago, and I talk about on a daily basis. So whether you have bottle calves, you save up and buy a couple cows, you're feeding these cattle with a 5-gallon bucket and pitchfork, and it's great. And then you add on a few, you get up to 5, 10 cows, you get up to 20 calves, you're working uptown, you're starting to get overwhelmed. So then you save up a little money and you maybe buy a bobcat or maybe a bale unroller. And now you got way too much overhead for the amount of cattle you have. You spend a couple years not making any money, and you run, and pretty soon you get caught up, and maybe you get up to 30 cows, maybe you get up to 60 stockers or 60 bottle calves, and now you're back to what? You're overwhelmed again. When you save up your money, maybe you buy a tractor, maybe you buy a bale trailer. I've talked to headlamp crew guys. If you run around with a bale unroller, you could get something you could haul 5 bales in. How much time would that save you? But then you make that next step, and guess what? You have too much overhead. You're back to not making any money for 3-4 years until you get up right. You're always just in and out, in and out. So then at some point, okay, you save up your money, you get a tractor, you get a bale trailer, you have too much overhead. You work your way up to 100 cows or 200 stockers. Well, now you need, like a mixer setup, things like that. And again, you could do that for maybe 50, 60,000 on the very, very low end. Or you could go, rent a facilities for 2,000, 3,000 a month. There's just lots of opportunities, right? But now we're talking way more infrastructure. We're talking way more employees. Now you got to figure, you've been out this for 25 years. Are your kids going to get in, or are you going to, are you going to borrow money and buy a place that has this, or, you got all these factors weighing on you. And meanwhile, you still got to, you've got to be at 200 head of cattle in order to even entertain some of this stuff. And so, where are you at, right? A lot of times we just have to look and say, hey, here's where we're at in this journey that, maybe it's going to take 30 years. Okay, I'm at year 7. I would have liked to have been a little better. I was hoping to be here by year 5. But also, if I think I'm going to be at year 15 and year 7, and I borrow the money to do that, I'm probably going to be out of business. So we're always, yep, if I go buy a nice John Deere, I should have a shop to park it in. But if I go broke because I built a shop, what good did that do? I should have a nice feeding facility. But if I go broke in the meantime, what good did that do? So, like I said, there's always this elastic. You get overwhelmed by what you're doing with the equipment you have, and then you solve that problem, and now you don't make any money for 2 or 3 years, and you're constantly back and forth. So, what do? You need a business plan so that you don't lose your mind, right? I mean, it freaking rained an inch and a half in the last 12 hours. My place is a disaster. But I know that until I get, 200 head of feeders, which is quite an undertaking right now, that's just what I got to deal with. But I also know that, okay, this is just this spot on this journey. But, my next step on this journey is, a lot of it's predicated on what my son's going to do. And right now he's married to a gal who lives 150 miles away. So that changes how I'm going to borrow money. Price of cattle, I'm not going to borrow money to buy feeders at $112 to $1,500 a head. I took this brewer's grain bit off way more than I could chew. Could I have bought 100 head 4 years ago instead of my Kenworth? Yeah, but guess what? I wouldn't have made a dime feeding them because I wouldn't have the brew. So, have a business plan and stay with it. If your goal was to buy 5 cows this year, just do that. You know, don't get all freaking wound up on, you know, cattle markets, this and that. You got to kind of stay the course. And yep, is it a bitch to go start that John Deere when it's 8 degrees? Yes. Is it a bitch to go feed cows a brewer's grain commodity when it's rained an inch and a half? Yes. But that's a stop we're going to make on a 30-year journey. God bless you. Merry Christmas, it says right there for you dyslexic.